back to a new episode of Translating Love with this guy and this gal. Woifi and Dani. Dani and Woifi.
Wanny and
Blanny.
Doifi.
Doifi and Clanny.
I like Wanny and Doifi.
Doifi.
I mean, that actually kind of works because it's kind of like the Woifi. Doifi.
A lot of people called me Woifi Doifi.
Really?
Yeah, I hated it.
So glad you told me that, so now I can call you Woifi Doifi.
I was like in elementary school and middle school, Woifi Doifi.
My dad used to call me Dani Banani.
Dani Banani. Because you like to eat bananas, or you look like one?
Probably both. I was really jaundiced as a child.
And bent and yellow.
Jaundice means yellow.
Oh. But somehow your feet were always brown and dirty, so it looked like...
Because I was barefoot all the time.
Yeah.
My feet are always dirty.
Brown
in the
and dirty.
summertime.
Oh boy. We're back. I haven't said that yet. We're back on the episode. No, I haven't said that yet.
You said episode.
Episode. No, this is a new episode, but I didn't say we're back with a new episode.
You did actually, but okay.
Okay, then I said it again. Thanks everybody for listening and for sharing the podcast. And also for feedback. We love to hear feedback from you. So if you just have some kind words, or if you want to send us a death threat, or
please don't do that.
Something else, you can do that on our Instagram or email.
I mean, we told them with any like negative reviews, we told them at one point they can write them on a piece of paper, crumple it up, and throw it in their trash, because it's not throwing it away in the trash. It actually comes to us that way. It's like a teleportation device. That's
where you can also leave your death threats.
Yes. Yeah.
But yeah, I don't have anything else to say.
I don't really either. How was your day?
It was okay.
I mean, you got to sit outside a little bit, it looked like, and enjoy the weather.
Yeah.
It's super hot today, which is wonderful.
We have a heat wave right now. Yeah. Also, I had a too big of a coffee, and now I'm super jittery.
Mm.
Yeah.
That's no fun.
Wasn't a smart choice. And also I don't know, I should stay away from coffee right now. But yeah, how was your day?
My day was fine. Work was nice. Had some nice massage patients and some weird ones.
Oh, you will have a nice one later.
Who's coming by?
Yeah. Someone is coming by later.
Is it a massage therapist for me so I can get a massage?
No,
because, I actually really need a massage.
A patient is coming by later.
My back hurts really bad.
You probably know him. He's really nice and generous, so you might get a tip.
Uh-huh. When does that patient ever...
Actually, you get most of the time more than a tip.
Are you making some sexual innuendo?
Sorry, everybody. But let's talk about anxiety because it's so much fun.
No, we're talking more about. We have other episodes on anxiety, like the beginnings of anxiety and experiencing it for the first time, and also different types of anxiety.
Yes.
I mean, really only our own. Maybe we should do an episode about like multiple different types of anxiety, just to give an overview.
Social anxiety, for example.
That would be interesting. Mm-hmm. Anyways, for example, Woifi has health anxiety and I have relationship anxiety. And I think we also both have some generalized anxiety. I think everyone who has a specific anxiety also has generalized anxiety to some degree.
Yeah, they overlap at least a little bit.
But we have specific episodes on those. But I was thinking we could talk more about when anxiety resurfaces. Because after you put in the work to help your anxiety to not be so bad, you might experience a fairly long period of time with no anxiety. And all of a sudden it comes back. And I thought maybe we could talk about what that feels like and why it's normal and what you can do, what we do, any tips we can give.
Yes, right. Let me just think quickly.
Some good input there.
Now, we talked about anxiety and we talked about the things that happen in your body, and that basically you train yourself to release certain things, certain
Hormones and
chemicals in your brain. That
is it serotonin?
Serotonin and
adrenaline,
right? Is it serotonin?
I think it's serotonin.
We'll look that up. So those hormones or those types of chemicals get released on like a daily basis, or even like in a certain amount of hour and whatever, and they cause symptoms, and those symptoms are usually bound to anxiety. It's cortisol.
Oh, cortisol. Sorry.
It's cortisol and adrenaline. Yeah. So both.
Basically, I mean, cortisol is released normally in your body anyways. It's a natural thing to be released, but it's typically in your sympathetic nervous system with the fight or flight response. Yeah. And that gives you that and that also adrenaline comes along with that, because it gives you the energy you need to be able to flee a situation, for example.
Yeah.
But when you're anxious, your body produces it anyways, even though you're not in a fight or flight situation. Yeah, and that's exactly why you feel those things, all of those, like the heart racing, it's getting harder to breathe, or, you might have a panic attack as a result.
You train your brain to release it like on a schedule, even though you don't need those chemicals. And you fall into a habit of you are constantly anxious, or like you're on a wave where it gets lower again, where you feel like normal, and then all of a sudden it comes up again. And the peak of a wave is obviously a panic attack, which is shitty and probably happens to a lot of people, even though they might not know that it's a panic attack. And it's basically all together, like you feel like you have a heart attack, or something's severely wrong with you, or you feel like you're dying. And that can be caused by a lot of stress combined with anxiety, and a lot of things that usually already tell us at a sooner point that maybe we should like take a break, maybe talk to someone, or maybe that you are like, prone to anxiety. You probably know already to listen to your body and to certain symptoms to avoid getting sucked into one of those cycles again. Yeah. But nevertheless, anxiety is usually something that is there, and it doesn't go away. It's always there. The key is to,
and that's not to be discouraging in any way. It's just something that, it's not really something that you can cure. It's something you can train.
Yeah. So the goal is to make it so, I like to compare it as size, to make it so small that you can just live with it at it on a daily basis, and that it's bearable, and that it's not really, affecting you in any negative way anymore. And it's
where for example, you might get to a point where an anxious thought comes, and maybe a year ago that anxious thought would put you into like a downward spiral of anxiety. But now that anxious thought comes and goes. It passes through your mind still, where you still think about it, like, this thing, or, whatever it is that bothers you. Yeah. But then it goes as quickly as it comes. So that's not to say that you're always going to have anxiety to the extent that you might be experiencing it now, but that it can get better, and those thoughts, even when they come, will just pass on by.
Yeah. And I think that's an important thing to remind yourself, even though when your anxiety is high, or when you experience anxiety for the first time, or when you're in the phase where you're trying to cope with it. First of all, there are a lot of things you can do. You can, for example, try to take CBD, or drink certain teas that help a lot. Meditate, yoga, sport stuff, fitness stuff that might help.
Fitness is a really good way to do it. Even if it's not super, super active, you maybe go for a bike ride or something.
Yeah,
or
just
move your body, because the thing is, when your brain is, producing so much cortisol and adrenaline, when you're anxious, there's nowhere for that to go.
Yeah.
Whereas if it's an actual dangerous situation, your body's using it because you need it to run away from something, for example. Yeah. But if you're not really in a dangerous situation and you're producing that hormone, where does it go?
You're stuck with
and
it.
And it only produces more and more and more.
Yeah.
And so if you can get yourself moving, if you can, elevate your heart rate in a good way, then your body's like, oh, I'm using this now. And it helps you to calm down.
And obviously there are a lot of things what you should avoid. I think one of the biggest things is alcohol, because it's super accessible, and, treat yourself to a glass of wine or like beer, or once in a while, now with the world opening up a little bit, having a little party at the weekend. But it's the worst thing that you can do. And it doesn't matter if you have anxiety or if you're depressed. Alcohol is like the worst poison for your mind. It's already bad for you, like,
and your liver,
like really bad for you. But taking or drinking alcohol while being anxious or depressed puts you down more. And it has usually a severe impact. And caffeine is the same thing. Caffeine, it doesn't affect you as long as alcohol does usually, but caffeine puts you also through like it gets things going. And if you're really anxious,
it elevates your heart rate,
right? It basically
alcohol slows down your heart rate. And coffee speeds it up. And neither of those, and alcohol has other side effects on your brain and your liver that obviously. So
things like that you should avoid. And then obviously stress. If you're already anxious or depressed, maybe try to avoid stress.
Take some time for yourself.
Right.
Maybe.
Which doesn't mean you can't do shit, but more like meditate, be more outside, be more active. Maybe
it also doesn't mean you have to. Taking time for yourself doesn't mean doing something alone necessarily. It can just mean do something that brings you joy and that makes you happy, that doesn't bring you stress, that doesn't make you worried or anxious. Just do something purely for the joy of it. Yeah. Let's maybe take a quick break.
Hey, I'm Kara, host of the Conquest of Bliss podcast, a show designed to help people explore well-being in a casual setting. The thing is that I spent a super long time searching for well-being, and once I finally started to gather some of the tools and understanding, I started wondering why it was so hard to access in the first place. So, the Conquest of Bliss was born. And even though it still feels extremely vulnerable, every week I release a new conversation about important topics that make up our well-being. Amazingly, I get to spend my time talking to experts like neuroscientists and psychologists, and lay people like plumbers, authors, and yoga instructors, all helping me working together to create a diverse, expansive library of conversations around what happiness and well-being are, what tools we can use to get there, and what it looks like sometimes when it plays out in the real world. If you want to join me on my journey, The Conquest of Bliss is available anywhere podcasts are found.
And we're back.
Indeed.
So, but the main topic, we talked about all of stuff. You should go back in to the episode with health anxiety, relationship anxiety, and I think revisiting anxiety. Those 3 episodes are...
But I also think we have, before our specific ones, we also have an episode just on anxiety.
No.
Really?
No. Okay. We didn't. We have 3 episodes, so 2 are based on our anxiety, and then 1 where we just went back at it and how we felt and how to deal with stuff like that, and more insight to the whole thing. But as we already said, that anxiety is not just leaving you alone. If you experienced it at some point, you will be able to handle it. And there are a lot of tools out there, which we already discussed, but it might resurface at some points. And I think with the pandemic and with like all that stuff, that uncertainty and maybe more stress and just more like, you're sitting at home a lot all the time or most of the time, and not like, being out there as much, having that many contacts with friends and maybe family. You are prone to, think about stuff more. You're prone to actively and consciously be aware of maybe yourself and your thoughts and how you're doing right now, and then maybe all of the stuff with things, with Corona, and it can feel heavy at some point, and that can cause anxiety and obviously also depression. And I think it can be a big cause for anxiety resurfacing. And for myself, I'm experiencing an anxiety high right now. It's not bad. It's there. But I feel it, and I know that for me it comes from a lot of stress with potentially building at some point sooner, and also like the fact that I haven't had like a real vacation in over a year, like away, like staying away somewhere, getting out of the house, getting out of the four walls, and seeing something else and trying to shut off for a couple of days. And I don't know, that the whole thing, and also of course, like with the Delta variant of Corona and trying to get the vaccine finally finished, stuff like that, it does a lot of things that I have to deal right now, that I'm trying to cope myself. And that's why I'm like trying to take my time for myself and be more active again, even though it kind of sucks right now because when it's so hot, running is not so fun outside. But laying outside in the sun, reading, and just trying to do more stuff that is joyous to me. But yeah, I think it's a good I don't want to say like train yourself or be aware all the time that it might come back, because that's not the right way to do, because then you're already like focused on everything and you might pull yourself into like anxiety again. But it's just something that should be on your mind if you have experienced anxiety or like a panic attack at some point in your life. It might surface again, especially when you're, when they're outside sources, or when they're like things that make your life harder at a certain point. It can influence that. Yeah.
I mean, what I wanted to say was that, because you kind of went on like, I don't know, I want to talk about like when it resurfaces and why it resurfaces. And I mean, so because I think a lot of people don't maybe know that. They don't know that it can resurface and how it can feel when it resurfaces. And for me, it was once I recognized that I had anxiety, and once I recognized what kind of anxiety that I had, I worked really hard to get through it. And then I would, for a time, I would maybe have like a week where I didn't have it, and then it would come back, and then I would go a little longer, and I would have maybe a month.
That's the classic. Yeah.
At some point, it was so long that I couldn't even remember the last time I was anxious. And that's, I think, where it is the worst when it comes back. Because if it's only a week, you're like, okay, I just felt this a week ago, it doesn't feel that heavy. Or a month, you can remember the last time you were anxious. But when it goes so long without, you don't feel it, all of a sudden it comes back, and it literally feels like you're hit by a train. Because for me personally, I had the feeling like I just took 5,000 steps backwards, because I'm right back where I am. I'm thinking the same things I was thinking before I did all the work, and it felt like all of the work was for nothing. And I think that it's important to recognize that that's normal to feel that way, but also that it doesn't mean you're taking a step backwards. But you should rather look at the fact of you can't even remember the last time you felt anxious, and that's massive. And so that you have to be able to look at the positive side of it, that you haven't felt anxious for so long, which means everything you were doing worked.
I like the analogy of waves, because it always comes in waves. It goes down and up, and eventually the waves die down, and at some point there's a bigger one. But as you said, if you haven't had like a stretch where, if you like haven't had anxiety for 3 weeks, and then all of a sudden you feel it again, it feels much heavier, or it can feel much heavier, and then all of a sudden you might think like, oh shit, it's back again, or like, did I do something, or did something trigger it? No, I think that's not necessarily important, and also the point. I think the fact that you went so far without having an anxious day or thought or time proves that it's working. And I think the first sign of you're doing something right and you're working towards getting rid of it, in the sense that you can,
or I would say be in control of it.
Right. Controlling it is one afternoon or even a few hours without it, and eventually it becomes a day, and eventually it becomes like a week, and those stretches of time get bigger and bigger. It's hard work.
And the other thing that you will notice is that not only do the stretches of time without anxiety get bigger, but the stretches of time with anxiety get smaller.
Yes.
Where you might have been, a year ago, you might have been anxious for a week straight, where it's just like you constantly feel anxious.
Yeah.
But then maybe a year later, you haven't had anxiety for a long time, and when it comes back, it feels really strong, but maybe it's only there for a day or 2 days.
Yeah.
And that's also something that's good to try to remind yourself of.
Yes, and also, I mean, the thing is, the longer you go without anxiety, the more comfortable you get, which is fine. Again, you shouldn't be like on the lookout for another anxiety attack, but you should be aware of the signs that your body gives you. Sometimes it's as simple as I'm bloated constantly, or I'm having bad stool, bad poop, for example. Some people experience that, or heart race is also one. Like all of a sudden, you're just sitting and all of a sudden your heart is racing again, or problem breathing, like your chest feels tight, for example, or a headache is also something, or you're tight all of a sudden all the time, and you're like, okay.
I feel like it's along with that. I feel like it's not to cut you off, but I feel like to add with it is that you should also try to be aware of your triggers. So not just like what you were talking about, but also like know what your triggers are. Know like if I see this person or if this person gets talked about, that's a trigger for me. Not to avoid it, because I don't think that avoiding situations is the answer.
I think the best thing is to not. I'm not
but
saying
you can prepare yourself.
Dive into it, but you can most of the time control how much you get from the trigger and how much you can't. And try to do that. Try to get like little bits and pieces there. And like, for example, if you're super afraid of spiders and you want to get rid of that fear, you want to confront yourself with spiders, but you can control it. You can start with look at a picture or videos, and then go further. And at some point you maybe go closer up to spiders in your house, stuff like that.
Yeah.
You have to confront it a little bit, at least, to get rid of that. Or to lower the trigger, essentially. That's what you want to do. Not to say that it might just completely vanish. It could happen, but it might not. But it gets easier to deal with it. For me, it was just like the thought of getting sick and certain types of sicknesses, and I had to just confront myself with things like that, like reading about stuff or watching a movie where this topic is a part of it. But yeah, essentially at some point it might come back or will come back. And I think a good way to deal with it is to, you won't catch it early most of the time. Maybe you do, but most of the time you don't, because, life's busy and you have things to do, and all of a sudden you'll find yourself maybe in like an anxiety week or day again. But I think the important thing to know is that you already, dealt with it in a really good way, because otherwise it wouldn't have been away.
Yeah.
And the tools are there, and you most of the time know already what to do.
Yeah.
And the thing is, that's something I can't preach enough, is that it's fine to have those thoughts. It's okay that they're there, and you can give them the room they need, but you have to remind yourself that at the end, it's just your head messing with you. It's just thoughts. It's nothing else. It can't hurt you. It won't put you into any danger. And the physical symptoms that come with it, again, that's also something you have to ask a doctor if you feel like, okay, that could be severe. But if it's just those typical symptoms from anxiety, that can't hurt you at any way or any point. And that's something to tell yourself multiple times, that it's okay to feel like this. It's okay to have those thoughts, to acknowledge that they're there, but not give them any like attention. That's what I like to say. Yeah.
I think it's also important to say, I mean, what's helped me too, first of all, it's important to say that a panic attack also cannot harm you.
Right.
It can't hurt you, even though it can feel really scary.
Yeah.
And for me, what's really helped is not only if I have a panic attack, but also if I just am anxious, to say out loud what you're experiencing. Because then you're telling your brain, because you might be feeling all these things, and if you think something, maybe the thought just gets lost in all the other thoughts. But if you physically say out loud, I'm experiencing a panic attack.
Yeah.
For me, that has really helped me to hear myself say it, because then I'm like, okay, I know a panic attack can't really hurt me. I know I'm not experiencing something else. I'm not dying. Nothing else is happening. All those other thoughts can be pushed aside. And it's the same when you're anxious. I tend to say out loud, I'm experiencing anxiety right now.
That's exactly what I mean with acknowledging it, but not giving any attention. I mean, that's hard. It's not an easy way to do, but if you already done it, you know what to do. And probably at the sooner point, it will just fade away again, and you will be like, okay.
If you're interested in like hearing our examples, like in our experiences of what helped us and what we did with dealing with anxiety, you can listen to the other episodes as well, because we go through a lot of what helped us.
I'll link it in the description. Yeah,
specifically with health anxiety, with relationship anxiety, but those things can help with, I think, any type of anxiety. So
yeah, that's it.
That's it. If you're out there feeling anxious, just know that you're not alone.
And it's fine.
And it's okay to feel that way, and it will get better. You have to put in the work to do it, but it will get better. Yeah. And it's not always going to be that way.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you like what you hear, please consider subscribing. We really would love that. Apple Podcast, you can rate and review the podcast. And if you want to talk, if you want to shoot us a message on our Instagram at Translating Love Podcast, or anchor page, or website, translatinglovepodcast.com. That's it. We see you next week.
Goodbye.
We hear you. Sorry.
They hear us.
We
don't hear them.
Bye.
Bye.